Good morning, everyone. His Magnificence, the Rector of the University of Warsaw, Professor Marcin Pawis, former Deputy Foreign Minister, Dr. Zalewski, Honorable Shri Giriraj Singh, Minister of State for Small, Micro and Medium Enterprises, Government of India, an Indian with some awareness of the recent and not so recent past comes to Warsaw with a deep sense of the vicissitudes of history. Having the misfortune of being located at geographic crossroads, Poland's frontiers have waxed and waned over centuries, buffeted by forces of regional history. In early and mid-16th century, Poland was a large and powerful state, only to be visited by interventions and partitions by neighboring empires. The subsequent Polish struggles for freedom and restoration of democracy is therefore admirable, and a visitor from the world's largest democracy cannot but salute the indomitable Polish spirit reflected in a republic that has dedicated itself, and I quote the words, for the common good of all its citizens and is desirous of guaranteeing their rights for all times. I am happy to be in this historic city and feel humbled by your invitation to address you. Given your own attachment to the concept, I propose to share with you some thoughts on our experience with democracy and to shed light on, firstly, its principles, secondly, its mechanisms, and thirdly, the challenges that have emerged from time to time. Some 3 decades ago, an eminent sociologist called Indian democracy a secular miracle of the modern world and a model for other developing countries. 7 decades after independence, the miracle of Indian democracy continues to shine like a beacon of hope for those who cherish freedom with its foundations in basic human values. India has long defied the proposition held with near canonical certitude by those who make their livings studying comparative politics that predicts unstable democratic politics at low level of economic development, high levels of inequality, and a high level of social diversity. To those who know India well, however, it was hard to imagine that if India's multicultural diversity was to be organized as an enduring single state, it could be organized as anything but as a democratic polity. It is a truism that each country and people shape their destiny in their own unique way, informed by their historical experience. In our case, it dates back to at least the 5th century BC. This long argumentative tradition and tolerance of heterodoxy has provided a fertile ground for the flourishing of our democracy. In a contemporary sense, the democratic consciousness of independent India is a reflection of the legacy of our struggle for independence from colonial rule. Much of the gains of our national movement are enshrined in our constitution and continues to enlighten the political and judicial discourse in India. Our people have used this legacy as the yardstick to judge the subsequent performance of governments, political parties, and institutions. Our Constitution provides the framework for a bicameral parliamentary democracy in a quasi-federal framework. Its objective is an equitable society to be achieved through a socio-economic transformation using constitutional institutions and the principle of rule of law. The Constitution granted universal adult suffrage to all citizens at a time when it was not even considered in many of the older democracies. It proclaims a Charter of Rights and Duties. It enunciates certain directive principles for state policy to ensure social, economic, and political justice for the people. It also delineates the legislative jurisdiction of the Union and the state legislatures. Thus, it is through the Constitution that a diverse collection of individuals and groups became the people of a single book, one that reflects their commitment to protect their mutual rights and which articulates a collective identity. An eminent British political scientist of the last century put the preamble of the Constitution of India on the first page of his last book, published in August 1950, because, as he wrote, it stated in a brief and pithy form the argument of much of the book. The constitutional mechanisms have upheld and maintained the democratic form. Periodic elections, an independent election commission, and an independent judiciary have sweeping powers of judicial review has helped foster a culture of democracy. The magnitude of the conduct of elections in India is a challenge to any institutional framework. The first general election was held in 1951 when the size of the electorate was 173 million. The 16th general election in the year 2014 saw a total electorate of 814.4 million, 66% of whom cast their votes to elect 543 members of the lower house of parliament from amongst 8,251 candidates belonging to some 464 different political parties. The election was conducted through 930,000 voting centers and electronic. Over 6 million personnel were mobilized for various electoral duties. It has been rightly called the largest exercise in democracy ever. Given our federal structure, periodic elections are held for state legislative assemblies, who also elect through a prescribed procedure members of the Council of States of the Union Parliament. Both in Parliament and in state assemblies, special representation is given to the historically underprivileged segments of our society. Mandatory representation was given to women in village councils and municipalities through constitutional amendments in 1992. A similar step in state assemblies and in the Union Parliament is yet to be taken. Measured against universally accepted norms and practices, Indian democracy has been a success, and the democratic consciousness has seeped into the psyche of our people, our public. Ladies and gentlemen, all democracies contain within them tensions between societal constraints and individual liberties, imperatives of state security and citizen freedoms, as well as between the divergent political, social, and economic approaches. In our case, social justice, acceptance and implementation of diversity, and prevention and correctives to social discord remain perennial challenges. India is a plural society of immense diversity with different social, religious, cultural, and linguistic expressions. It has almost as many ethnic groups as the entire African continent. The Constitution recognizes 22 languages and over 100 dialects. The value of currency unit is written in 17 different scripts. Adherents of all major religions of the world are present in our citizen body. Religious minorities constitute 19.4% of our people. Containment of social discord remains a recurring challenge. All segments of our society, regardless of faith, are stratified in socio-economic categories with deep roots in the past. In such diversity, which is regional, social, linguistic, and religious, tensions are unavoidable, and at times they escalate into conflicts. These are often local and transitory, and the same allegedly democratic process that generates them also helps resolve them in good measure. Public awareness, avoidance of extremist postures, and prompt corrective action by the administration assists the process. Absence of these, for whatever reason, aggravates them and causes damage to the social fabric. Democracy in India has taken equality and social inclusion as one of its objectives. Institutions of democracy have served as a medium by which communities and people have come to assert their dignity and demand social and economic equality. Democracy has also been a harbinger of social empowerment. As a result of the system of institutionalized open political competition, the historically marginalized segments have been mobilized to challenge the societal status quo. This mobilization has resulted in a substantive deepening of Indian democracy. There has also been a spatial expansion of democracy in India. A federal political structure process, both at independence and more recently in the passing of the 73rd Constitutional Amendment, has helped ensure the accommodation of regional aspirations. After this amendment, democratic institutions at grassroots, or what we call Panchayat Raj institutions, have been energized. They have led to decentralized planning and have created new arenas for the people to negotiate with the furniture of government. Our democratic framework has provided the required space for associative activism, and in a benevolent cycle, the development of civil society has also contributed to India's democratic deepening and invigorated a norm of vibrant civic engagement with the state. Two of the most liberal and empowering pieces of legislation that India has adopted in recent years, giving the citizens the right to information and the right to free basic education, were both spearheaded by the civil society organizations in this country. Operation of democracy also ensures that we have financial inclusion schemes and are universalizing education, social health, and insurance programs. We are modernizing our agriculture, manufacturing, and services, and are trying to adopt digital transactions. Our Human Development Index, modest as yet, is rising, and in some more developed regions like Kerala, approximates those of developed nations. New economic policies, including the liberalization program, were fostered in a democratic and deliberative environment. India is now getting used to its much higher rate of growth. It is noteworthy that India's principal success has come not in traditional areas of exports, but largely on newer industries with a large component of high-tech, such as information technology industry, which has rapidly grown to become a giant from a very modest beginning. Another such area is that of pharmaceuticals, where Indian ingenuity has brought huge reductions, sometimes a cut of 80% or so, in the price of many essential drugs like AIDS medicines. Such growth has allowed us to lift millions of Indians out of abject poverty and to offer them a better quality of life. India's GDP now is almost 2.4 trillion US dollars, from just about $273 billion in the year 1991, an increase of almost 9 times. Our per capita income in the same period increased almost 15 times in terms of current and 12 times in constant prices. The growing Indian middle class is now a market of global significance. Despite the general global slowdown, the United Nations World Economic Situation and Prospects for the year 2017 report projects that the Indian economy will grow by 7.7% in the year 2017 and 7.6% in the year 2018, benefiting from strong private consumption, making it the fastest growing large economy in the world. While the net effect of economic growth has been an improvement in the quality of life of an average Indian citizens, these benefits have been unevenly distributed. And yet, it is a testament to the democratic deepening in India that the losers from the market-led reforms have not challenged the democratic system itself. Friends, well before India proceeded on its democratic journey, our founding fathers had understood that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. A democratic India, therefore, stood in solidarity with the people of Africa and other Asian countries who were struggling to take charge of their own destiny by overthrowing the chains of colonial power. India remained a strong partner as they sought independence and self-sufficiency. India sees democratic and peaceful means not only as means to resolve the differences within countries, but also supports the democratization of international relations and global governance. The largest challenges that face humanity today, be it the impact of climate change or the rising tide of extremism and terrorism, require cooperation and collaboration between all nations of the world for their resolution. In India, the many discontents are manageable precisely because there is a democratic framework. For the last 70 years, we have worked democracy to the best of our capacity, not yet to the best of our ability. It is a receding horizon. Operating a democracy is always work in progress. Despite the success of democracy in India, there still remains a number of challenges to the deepening and consolidation of democracy. Democracy is a self-correcting and self-improving mechanism. The solution to addressing the gaps and failings of democracy is indeed more democracy. It is when democracy stops working, when conflicts are not peacefully resolved, that violent separatist movements and religious conflicts emerge. It is when the system is not inclusive and people do not have the chance to express their demands, when their rights are trampled and pluralism is suffocated, that they look for other alternatives for advancing interests. A majority, no matter how overwhelming, does not invalidate opposition. The one crucial test of a true democracy is how it protects and respects the rights of minorities, be they religious or political, especially in the face of populist currents. A democracy only flourishes when divergent voices can be freely heard without fear of an official or populist backlash. Democracy, in the end, is about people. The people of India, the masses, are the best guarantee for our democratic future. As long as the ordinary Indian holds true the values of democracy and cultural practices of syncretism, as long as our people are resistant to usurpation of their rights and do not succumb to sectarian and communal thought, there remains great hope that our democracy will continue to thrive and inspire others.